This dense book of logos holds an iconic symbol, the mark of our generation's most coveted fashion brand, a brand which revolutionized streetwear, mainstream fringe culture, and turned one designer into a legend. Wait, we're not talking about Glasgow Airport in 1965. To us, this mark belongs to Off-White. The most renowned designer of the last decade, Virgil Abloh, stole this logo from this book of letter marks and symbols. A man merited for his design sensibilities, seems to be more of a curator than a creator, but maybe that's just what it means to be creative. In this video, we will define 3 appropriate methods of stealing work without plagiarizing, and ultimately how to leave a lasting impact in any field that you work in. I often struggle with how much inspiration I'm allowed to take. Where's the line drawn from plagiarism to unique idea? I think all of us have indulged in this sort of cynicism of originality. Everything is a copy of a copy of a copy. There isn't true originality anymore. My personal struggle led me to read the book Steal Like an Artist. You've likely seen this book already, it's everywhere. But I want to study the really interesting, actionable, actually useful things from this book that for some reason people seem to skim past or just ignore entirely. Virgil Abloh mentioned you can steal any idea as long as you edit it by 3%.
Right now, I'm only interested in editing something 3% from its original form.
I think it should be more like 20%. But you should actually limit the amount of change that you introduce. Ideas must remain familiar enough to be recognized in our time. Being too revolutionary is an easy way to get ignored. I mean, think of Van Gogh. His paintings are among the most respected nowadays, but he was so ahead of his time that he cut off his own ear from the despairs of failure. I don't know about you, but I'd like to see some success from my work while I'm still living. Unfortunately, Van Gogh didn't have that luxury. Incremental progress in the short term can result in culture-defining change in the future. You can be a part of that change, a part of the lineage of an idea. As mentioned before, everything is a copy of a copy of a copy. This isn't exactly true. It's more like everything is a copy of several things, which is a copy of several other things. Think back to primary school biology where you learned about biologist Gregor Mendel. Mendel is the father of modern genetics. Mendel was a failed science teacher and had to resort to becoming a monk. At his monastery, he kept a garden and indulged in his love for science by studying the variations in inherited plant traits. Like a yellow wrinkly pea crossed with a green smooth pea could result in a green wrinkly pea. This resulting pea isn't a copy of its parents. Inherent to its existence is originality. It carries with it a piece of each of its predecessors, but is singular in its own combination of traits. Austin Kleon, author of Steal Like an Artist, writes, "You are the sum of your influences," and specifically uses the word remix in defining his own genealogy of ideas. The mixing of ideas isn't equally distributed, however. I mention the work of Mendel because he was the first to assert that genes aren't just indiscriminately mixed up or the average of their 2 parts. In reality, there are dominant and recessive traits. I'll get back to why that's crucial to creative ideas later on in the video. Genealogy, however, is not a study of traits or genetics exactly. It's the study of family trees and lineage. My channel is based on one man's work. I've been making YouTube videos since I was 12, but I just couldn't figure out where my place on YouTube could be. This was until I saw director Max Joseph's YouTube videos.
Hi, I'm Max Joseph.
He uploaded a short series of videos that just blew me away. His astounding proficiency in pacing, storytelling, and visual language was utterly astonishing. The benefit of having mentors that you don't personally know and just observe their work is that you don't need their personal mentorship. They left their lesson plan in their work. So I just set out to copy him. I poured weeks into researching and editing my first video, and of course, it flopped. There was a huge failure in my approach to copying Max Joseph's work. At the time, I thought it was Max Joseph's animations, motion graphics, and cinematography that made him so great. In reality, it was his storytelling. I failed to understand what made his work great. Rather than admiring the superfluous ornaments of other people's work, you have to understand it deeply. You might be thinking now that it's going to be so much easier to create when you can just unapologetically steal from everybody. You're wrong. In this new context, you don't have to worry so much about being so original, but you need to relentlessly consume and research. Our new measurement for good work is the depth and quality of our sources. Obviously, execution is the ultimate measurement of good work, but here, in the ideation stage, be concerned with the quality of your curation. A significant challenge is what to ignore. We're smothered with content every waking second, which I actually think is kind of great, but you must choose what to forget or ignore and hold on to the things that genuinely resonate with you. An easy way in reducing the overwhelming quantity of work is to sink into depth, focusing on the nuance of a single artist or subject. Attention to depth happens to be more lucrative as well. You'll reach an executable level of understanding much quicker than if you splayed your concentration across multiple disciplines and artists. There's a rule called the 3-book rule that simply states by reading 3 books at any specific subject, you'll become an expert relative to the general population. In this day and age, I feel like there's some topics that you'd only need to read 1 book about. Imagine how proficient you can become in any niche by dedicating a substantial amount of time to that specific topic. By focusing on the depth of a matter and eliminating the limitless assortment of materials you could study, you'll find ideas and themes worth working on. You'll begin to recognize what ideas inspired your favorite artist, what ideas pushed them to follow the same path as their influences. Like I mentioned about the genealogy of ideas, Mendel's work was revolutionary because it revealed a dominant and recessive trait. I believe that in the production of creative works, there are also dominant and recessive ideas or themes. If you properly study the people that you admire, you'll find that sometimes they state exactly who or what their influences are. My favorite painter, Julie Morettu, candidly reveals her favorite painter, J.M.W. Turner. Here's a painting by Morettu, and here's a painting by Turner. These images are immediately strikingly different, but beyond first glance, you can begin to draw some basic comparisons. The turmoil, the manipulation of subject, and affection for abstraction. Both painters use the deconstruction of a subject to provoke an emotion. Though they are visually very different, they thematically follow the same trajectory. The dominant idea is what's expressed in these shared works. By acknowledging the dominant traits, you can then work backwards to see the disparities between each link. Reverse engineering what led one link to carry on the work of past iterations in their own work will allow you to find the hidden recessive traits. The recessive ideas are the manifestation of the individual. The recessive ideas are what Virgil Abloh recognized as the 3%. Morettu, conversely, acknowledges all her influences, Turner, Kandinsky, constructivist, and Italian futurist, but feels it's, quote, not necessarily being informed by other artists' work. It's about trying to understand yourself. To her, it's more about building a foundation from your influences and then reflecting on why their values resonate with you. And I think there will always be tension between artists like Abloh and Morettu. Abloh is more controversial in his direct appropriation, whereas Morettu is constantly praised for her innovation. Yet they are both brutally honest about their inspirations and openly reflect on what informs their work. Be transparent and upfront about your resources. Distasteful imitation isn't contributing to a lineage or inspiring to anyone. Copying directly can be a great means of learning, but only release work which you've sincerely expanded on. In the end, to ignore your predecessors is to abandon the progress that they worked tirelessly to accomplish. I understand the desire to be singularly original, but you'll never reach some acclaimed originality without starting with a robust, cultivated foundation.
It is our failure to become our perceived ideal that ultimately defines us and makes us unique. It's not easy, but if you accept your misfortune and handle it right, your perceived failure can become a catalyst for profound reinvention.